Oh yeah, sorry. Actually, my mother-in-law, when she lost her mom, she had a book, and it was out, and she said it really meant a lot to her in the future, and so she suggested this for me, and that is, if you are so inclined, especially after the end of the night with like lots of drinks, whatever, there's a book back there on the other, like by the window, and it would be amazing if you just wrote something. You don't have to know my mom. If you did, a story, a joke, whatever. Those of you who did know that anything goes with my mom, and so feel free to record anything. But those of you who didn't, like, you could just sign your name, and it would be lovely for my kids, and so feel free, and it's back there. Thanks.
Karaoke.
I do drink and have still.
Can the karaoke machine works? Alright, so this is from Fred Becker. It says, when my Bronwyn told me of this thoughtful event to celebrate my darling wife Mary, I thought the apple doesn't fall from the tree. Pretty original. Who but my fantastic Bronwyn, who learned so much from our Mary, would think to put together a celebration instead of a lament, as such a special way to remember and a remembrance of my remarkable and splendid Mary. When I learned that Sally from Seville, Courtney, who's the one who has the flu, if you don't succeed at first, Heather, loyal Shakti, colorful Daisley, and the real Pichu Macho Chris Neal were coming to celebrate Mary, I thought, these kids are as wonderful as I remember, except I guess they aren't kids anymore. They really define the term friends like family. If I tried to list all the fantastic gifts my Mary had, her beauty, her sense of style, her glorious dancing ability, her remarkably keen mind, this note would be very long and very moist. Her honesty, a virtue so strongly held by few. If only you'd seen her excitement when we traveled to China in 1982 in Nixon's footsteps, where she swore she would never again leave her Bronwyn behind on our travels, which is an oath that she kept. Her energy is simple to describe. When we would see a crowd gathering in Bangkok or Budapest, Venice, Seville, or Tokyo, she would take off towards it, dragging Bronwyn to see what's brewing, while I would be off the other direction trying to find a safe place to hunker down. Which I've actually seen that in person. She was always the spirit, the color, and the excitement behind our team. I miss her very much. Too much to come tonight. And that's it from your dad.
Oh, I love you.
Cheers, Fred. Yeah.
Chin chin, Fred.
Dr. Becker.
Okay, so here I go. I'm just gonna read. Okay. If I can see, I need reading glasses these days. All right, so here we go. She bought pommiers and madeleines instead of Oreos. When I wanted to wear a store-bought strawberry shortcake costume like my neighbor for Halloween, she made me a gypsy one with sparkling scarves as a skirt, a sequin headband, and huge hoop earrings. She sewed patches from all the countries we visited on my backpack instead of going with monograms, and went to museums on bazaars on weekends instead of ranches and football games. But I wanted to be like everyone else, and my mom continuously pushed me to be my own person. She even wrote on a card to Olivia several Christmases ago that I found underneath luggage days after she died, "Darling Olivia, my mother, your great-grandmother, used to ask me, do you have to look like everybody else so you dare to do your own thing? I know you will, my Olivia. Love, Grandma." Many of you know that my mom was a New Yorker through and through. Born on the Upper East Side, she started professional children's school for ballet when she was 5 years old, and later was groomed to be a principal ballerina for ABT. When I told her, 5 months pregnant with Olivia, that Josh and I were going to move to Brooklyn, the first thing she said was, "But then your kids will have to say they're from Brooklyn." And I can't imagine how a daughter of mine would want to live in the Booneytown burbs. So you can imagine her chagrin when my dad was offered the position of vice president of cancer research at MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, of all places. A prestigious position and beautiful life was promised to him, but my mom was horrified. She always told me that her biggest fear was me growing up like an azalea, alone in the backyard on a cul-de-sac. No excitement.
She didn't say that.
As a grown-up, I would joke that my mom that for my mom, the move to Houston could be compared to a Russian's move to Coney Island, since it caused her to identify even stronger as a New Yorker amidst a sea of Texans. We got the New York, hello. We got the New York Times, the New Yorker, New York Magazine, and the New York Review of Books. When I told my mom that I wanted to try out for cheerleader in middle school, she nearly fainted. Each time I used the word y'all or fixin', she cringed. And it wasn't always easy being her daughter in Houston, where everybody else's families were different. They hunted on weekends and wore sweaters with seams on them and really large bows in their hair. And my mom would have none of it. She hated the hoopla around boys' sports and that their lockers would be decorated by girls before football games, but that no one cared much about the girls' sports in general, although for sure she was always the loudest one yelling us on in the stands at our games. Thankfully, I had the chance to understand where my mom was coming from as I became a mom myself. And when Olivia asks me if I would care, wherever Olivia is, if she dyed the ends of her hair another color, I hear my mom's voice come through me when I say something like, honestly, Olivia, I don't care what color you dye your hair, but I'd like it better if you were the first to do it and not the 40th. Or when Graydon comes home filled with angst because he has been selected to be an announcer at the Winter Sing and has decided to opt out. Instead of saying something like, well, that's okay, maybe it's not your thing, instead I say, I'm sorry, but you're doing it. I can't wait to watch you. How will you know if it's not your thing if you don't at least try it? And I'll practice with you, and you'll be ready to kill it. And he did. Not only that, a performer was born. And I cried because my mom didn't see it. But it was really her who had encouraged him in the first place. My mom disliked fear. She lived her life on her own terms and thought worrying was a waste of time. When I told her how scared I was about Josh's open heart surgery in September, it's been a hell of a fall, she asked me about his doctors, the hospital, success rates, and said, what's your worrying going to do, Bronwyn? He is the best of the best, and it's in their hands. She couldn't have been happier when the days prior we sent her pictures of us deep sea fishing and at the U.S. Open instead of home and afraid. Throughout her life, in fact, she so personified a pillar of strength that when she got sick and I told her friends that she was in the ICU or in hospice, the first thing everyone said was something along the lines of, but your mom is such a force of life. One of the ways my mom showed her love for us was through presents, what she called treaties. For sure, she loved to shop. When she died, Graydon told me how much he would miss her. He listed many of the things he would miss especially, and I could tell he was holding something back. I said to him, I bet you're thinking about grandma presents, right? Grandma presents were what we called the random surprises that would just show up for the kids now and then, so thoughtfully selected and frequently totally random, but always exceptional. He looked at me, obviously afraid to admit it, so I told him through tears that grandma presents would continue because in a way, what grandma presents really are spontaneity and surprise and inspirations of joy when you least expect it. From the time she had her stroke on Halloween morning until the day she died on December 12th, she was hardly able to speak and paralyzed on her right side, which is beyond torturous for a woman as active and opinionated as her. But she was still there some of the time and could show it through her facial expressions. When I said to her, Mom, I know that you're sick of being here and of the doctors not making things better, she looked at me with eyes wide open and lifted her left arm emphatically, and I knew she was saying, hell yes I am. They're all incompetent. Get me to a better hospital. The craziest thing happened, though, the day after the doctors told us there was nothing more they could do and that it was time to remove the tubes and IVs and nightly disturbances and let her be in peace. They told me to bring the kids in the next day to say their goodbyes. I prepared Olivia and Graydon for an out-of-it grandma who wouldn't speak or move. But when she saw them walk in the room, it was like she woke up. She hadn't said more than 10 words in weeks. but she looked at Olivia and said with a big smile on her face, "My beautiful Olivia, my beautiful Olivia." And every time she looked at Graydon, she'd say, "Oh, my Graydon, my big boy." Before I left, I lay my head on her chest and told her how much I loved her. And she whispered back, "I love you more than anything in this world." And I know she did. The last conversation I had with my mom. Woohoo! This is a great part. I'm gonna pick it up. The last conversation I had with my mom, which at this point was just me speaking. I told her that I wanted her to know that I would miss her terribly, but that I would be strong because of her, and that I wasn't going to let everyone sit around crying and being sad, but that we would get out and seize life, and we would celebrate her and carry with us all her spirit, and that I'd make myself feel better by going for shopping, for lots of treaties, for everyone. And all of a sudden, she looked right at me when I said that, opened her eyes very wide with enthusiasm, and sort of sat forward with a smile. I guess she was really pleased to hear about the shopping part, and here we are at the celebration. I can't thank you all enough for coming tonight to celebrate my mom, Mary Becker. I'm surrounded by almost everyone that's important to me. Because my father, except for my father, who is too sad to be here, and a few of my best friends who are with me nonetheless, it really means a lot. Thank you.
What's the order?
Josh?
Okay.
No, it's you, like this.
This is not working.
Apparently, I don't know.
You don't need it.
Okay.
You don't need it.
Well,
It's like a
I was a trial attorney for a long time. I hope I can fill a room like this. You know, obviously, I want to make it a little happier. But like, I mean, before I do that, I want to make it happy and give some good memories and some good stories. But before I do that, you know, I just have to say, Bronwyn, I mean, watching what you went through and how much strength you brought to that whole time was so amazing. And you really used her spirit and channeled her spirit in every time we went there together, and I couldn't have been more impressed. And I will not forget that day that you just described when we went down there and we brought the kids and I went to Packer. And we got them and we came to Mom. She woke up and she had, you know, what you were talking about them and her having that conversation. And you know, just like she would have wanted you to, you were very honest with them. And you told them, just like she would want you to, what was happening in that frozen yogurt shop. And poor Olivia couldn't even finish her dessert. But if anybody knows Olivia, that's pretty much impossible. And I won't forget that. That was one of the most loving, one of the most amazing, and you know, obviously awful couple of hours that I've ever spent in this world. That's your mom's spirit for sure going through you. So backing up a whole lot, I met Bronwyn at Conn College. A lot of these people are from, and a lot of these people who haven't seen in a very long time are from. And I miss all of you. I'm really happy to see you. I guess I was a junior, and Bronwyn comes and moves into my hallway, and all of a sudden I'm having a chance with this woman who is a little bit older than me, who is just back from a year abroad, who's from Texas. I am extremely lucky. It's going really well. The time comes to finally meet your parents, and I actually remember this really clearly. I think we actually have a picture of this in the basement. And it's me and Bronwyn and Jim Garrels with this like beautiful long hair and this ridiculous green blazer, and your parents. And I mean, I remember really distinctly going out to that dinner and meeting them, and I've never met anyone like them. I mean, my family, if someone in my family has to sneeze, they go upstairs, turn on the water in the bathroom, very quietly, like let it out. I'm all of a sudden in a world where there is this wit and this love of life and this verve and this back and forth between your parents in the best way. And I wasn't quite sure what to do. But, you know, full of stories back and forth. I was so impressed. And I was pretty young, but I think I hung in there for a little bit. But unfortunately, Bronwyn's mom took one look at me and just rolled her eyes. And, was like, and this is actually really honest. I'm not joking. Like, this is the lamest dude I've ever seen. The most boring, the absolute worst. I cannot believe this is what's happening. And I can't believe this is what I have to work with. To give her some credit, she did not write me off. She got right to work. I mean, as you know, she got right to work and to challenge and sort of improve some things and take some things up. She had a never-ending quest to work on my fashion. I have an entire closet full of sort of purple sweaters and these shirts that are all amazing from brands I've never heard of. And the consistent theme. And, I actually do wear them sometimes. And she did not appreciate my sort of boarding school shabby chic thing I had going on, especially back then. For years after, I would get these packages with these amazing sweaters, these bright colors, these things that she really appreciated because she, like Bronwyn was saying, she just hated everyone being sort of conformist and the same. And she just hated it. And she just wanted people to be colorful and to live this life in a way that was a little bit better. And Daisy and I were just talking about this back at the house. And it's like, she just wanted more. And she wanted to be better, and why not? I mean, she loved pushing me in this like more colorful direction. It wasn't just clothes, and thankfully it wasn't just me. I mean, it was constantly challenging any kind of sloppy thinking anywhere she saw it, constantly relentless when she didn't agree with something. And you know what? She was like almost always totally right. It was very rare she wasn't right. I mean, I remember her. Maybe a year and a half ago, talking about how she joined the board of her condo and how she was just so furious with these people. So pissed at these people with their like lazy thinking and hiring this management company that was like doing nothing and it was super expensive, and I really kind of felt for them. the other members on that board. But I know she's right. She's totally right. And even though I didn't witness this, I've heard tale that she would even occasionally challenge the local homeless population around East 32nd Street about like why they're not working and why they maybe couldn't do a little more to contribute to society. And you know what? I totally believe it, and I kind of feel for them too. And she means it in the best possible way. I mean, if anyone who doesn't know her thinks that sounds a little weird, like she really does mean that in the best possible way. She would never let us let the kids down in all sorts of ways. I mean, just it was at the top of her head to always be doing a little better than maybe we were doing about the things we were exposing them to, what we had for them. And she would scour the internet, these catalogs, for these unbelievable, I mean, Bronwyn alluded to these toys or whatever, but they were unbelievable. And those things that, like, she has this, like, love of science that came through and what she would come up with from some random catalog I'd never heard of. That was this amazing thing for all three of them. And I think Olivia could back me up. I mean, you would see these things were unbelievable, and they would come randomly and be amazing in our house, and I hope we can keep that going a little bit, because it's really important. I was coming home last year from the MIT robotics conference, and we're in the cab going down to lunch, and she's bringing up all these books that I'd never considered, and I was like, wow, I wish I'd thought of that. And she was so smart, and and just so intelligent without any kind of like formal training, any kind of long education, and just blew me away in the cab that day. I mean, her spirit just totally shines through in our children. We were at brunch the other day, and I saw Graydon get this like mischief in his heart, and I saw it in his eyes. I was like, oh my God, that's Bronwyn's mom. And it really is, and it's a little terrifying as the parent to have this happening in your house, to have this sort of coming through the generations into the younger ones that I have to deal with. But like, I'm really happy they have it for their sake, because it's important and it's amazing. And I mean, I was thinking about when I had really seen her in her element and how to best describe her to a room of people that don't really know her that well, some of them anyway. And I was thinking back to this trip we took to Mexico a few years ago, and just to sort of like be able to kind of visualize what she was like really in her element. I mean, when we were down in Mexico, we're at this market, and it's just colors, and it's life, and it smells, and it's tons of people, and she just dives right in and pushes her way in, and there's these vendors that she's arguing with, and like haggling with in this nice way, and all of a sudden she comes out with these like giant pieces of art that are made out of like they're made out of like the most fragile kind of glass, whatever that is, you know? And it's like horns that stick out, and I'm like, how the fuck you can get that on the airplane? This is impossible. Like, this will never happen. And then sure enough, she has these guys like wrap it up in this like taped ball, and sure enough, these things are hanging on her wall. I mean, to go on that trip with her to a place like that, I mean, it just enriched my experience, and that's so typical of the kind of relationship I had with her over the years. And I hope that gives you some idea of sort of like the visual was. I mean, she pushed me out of my comfort zone. I really hated it. I really did. And I hated it until I realized that so many of the sort of improvements I've made over the years were actually kind of directly from her. And I really swear that's true. I mean, so many of the things that I had changed over the years was because of her like relentless push. And some of that comes from Bronwyn, for sure. But we'll just call it kind of the same thing, just kind of flowing through. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm going to end it there. I mean, when I think of the people who've had the largest impact on me in the last 10, 20 years, and I think she's absolutely at the top of that list. And I'm just so happy to be up here in front of this room. I mean, I think I've said it like 6 times tonight. A lot of you have heard me say it a million times, like how important it is to me to have this kind of community and this kind of like love and support and back and forth. And I hope I can give it back. And it just means so much to me that everyone's here. And I know. Let's give a toast to Bronwyn's mom.
Yay.
Cheers. Cash.
Good job, okay. Okay, so I can only do this, honestly. I had the privilege of meeting Ellen Becker when I was 11 years old. And she found this little, tiny little person. And she was like, I'm taking you. And so, honestly, I met her when I was 11. And immediately, I fell in love with her. I am living in Houston, Texas, and every mother is walking around in barrack sweaters, button-down polo shirts, and khakis. And there is Mary, and I just went, oh my God. Like, you're little like me, you are. And she was just amazing to me. And I had to write it down because it's just really hard. I mean, she was like, my mom texted me tonight to preface this, and she said, you got this. Like, you loved Mary with your whole heart, as we have loved Bronwyn with our whole heart and our family. So I was like, write it down. Okay. So, okay. Even at 11, I knew her light and her life force burned unusually bright, and I was truly in awe of her. Like the moment I met her. It might have taken a little bit longer for her to love me back that way because she has her tight tribe, but she really did. And when Mary loved you, she loved with all of her might. And how blessed was I that Mary chose to love me. She let you know you were important and strong, and she truly would take your face in both her hands and squish it together, kiss it. And she wore big red lips, and she had this beautiful red hair that my son actually shares with her perfectly. So I just think, oh God, he came from her, and we don't know how that happened. I mean, and she would squeeze it. Just so many things when you're with her, and she'd go, oh, it's marvelous. Like, no matter what you did, she'd be like, it's marvelous. Get over yourself. And it was just like, oh, I have to get it. So my mom said to me today also, by the way, the most important thing she taught you was to get over yourself. Which is a big deal when you're kind of growing up in a land of, my mom wasn't a barrack sweater person either, but, it's hard. And, okay, so Mary made you feel deeply cared for, while at the same time she was keeping you honest. So I was living in Paris in my late 20s, and Mary and Fred came, and I believe they came to visit me, but of course he was coming to lecture. So I got up early one morning, and I went to the hotel so I could see Fred before he left to go have lunch with him, because they were kind of my duo. There was no I loved her, but I adore him too. And so we had brunch and da-da-da, and he gets up to leave to go do his lecture for 12,000 people like he does. And Mary we are going shopping. And she, if you know her, she is the power of shopping in this world. And she looks at me when we leave the hotel. She goes, so we're going to get Luke, right? And Luke is my poodle that I had for 17 years. And I said, oh, he's the worst walker. We can't. Da-da-da-da-da. And she looks at me and she goes, you know, Sally, we both know who's fault that is. And then we walked off and had to go shop all day. And I'm like, this one, oh my God, I've ruined my tongue. And that was Mary. She loved you strong and she loved you hard. And there was nothing in between. And I feel that I'm so blessed to have been part of your mother's struggle.
Yes.
And I will miss her forever. But my boys know stories about Miss Mary and how unbelievably what her life force was. And I am loving on you and your dad and your children. And we will always know Mary. And that's the deal. We will always know Mary. There's no way around it. You can't get away from it even if you wanted to. She will be down here doing this.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay. But I want to be back to that video.
Okay, so my name's Alex, and I've actually known Bronwyn. I might be the oldest friend here. The biggest surprise. But I've known Bronwyn since I was 9. And
Oh, okay, all right. She's got the pre-birth.
Bronwyn and I had A and B babysitting. 2 responsible 9-year-olds, like the biggest oxymoron you ever heard in your life. But I just wanted to say about Mary, more than knowing her, I knew her as a mom to Bronwyn, and she was like always the best mom. And I remember in college, like we would drive to the post office, even though it was literally like a 3-minute walk. We would drive and like get the mail, and Bronwyn always had this like ginormous box from her mom. Every holiday and every like weekend, I remember with her love of shopping, she'd have a varietal of like hair things, or it was Halloween, so Bronwyn had pumpkin earrings that flashed, and it would be like Christmas, and we decorate the door with Mary's decorations. And she always brought a lot of spice and spirit into our lives that we could vicariously live through as our sort of joint mother. Like I basically had a barren box, and I was like, oh, I guess I forgot me this time. But the point is that her mom was always so amazing, and somebody that I always wished would be my mom, and somebody to emulate, and cared for Bronwyn so much. And I know Bronwyn was so close to her, which was why it was really important, I think, for all of us to come here tonight, because we all know how much she meant to her and what a great mom she was. And just those boxes and her constant care for Bronwyn, even when Bronwyn was far away, was so palpable and something that we all wish we had. So. I want to say cheers to Mary.
Cheers to Mary. Thank you, Alexandra.
Okay.
You want me to go and then? Yeah, you seem more ready.
I'm kind of quick.
I wish I had a microphone because I like having 2 things to hold.
That's what she said.
You brought my shirt. So I met Mary when my mom discovered that I was going to the same camp that Bronwyn had been going to, that Olivia now goes to. And my mom, being like sort of a traditional person, thought, hey, why don't we invite Bronwyn and her mom to the Junior League tea room? And so I rocked up in my like Laura Ashley sailor dress with boomers in 8th grade. And Bronwyn and then her mom are in the corner, like already there when we get there. And of course, like Mary is wearing like Dolce and Gabbana, and Bronwyn's wearing like CP shades. And I was like, everything I've ever known has been wrong. I have just met my match. So I fell immediately in love with Mary and of course Bronwyn, but I think she was like, who is this soft Texan child? Like, we don't need any more of her. And it took me a while to really like earn a little bit of respect from her. I think it was not until I actually moved from LA to New York that she was like, okay, fine. You might actually have an interesting job now. You might actually have done a few interesting things with your life. And one night, the Beckers invited me over to their house for Chinese food, which they always had the best order out Chinese food. And I remember someone said something like, oh, I read an article in the Post, and I had just fresh off the boat and just moved here. I was like, oh, I thought the Post was like a gossip newspaper. And Mary turned to me and she was like, oh, Daisley, don't be so naive. And I learned so much in that moment because I really did realize that there are so many sides to things, and it just encapsulated her sophistication and her knowledge on so many levels. And I think I've always looked up to her in a way that she is just the ultimate city woman. She is so stylish. She was someone who just took the life of the city and enjoyed it, and she gave that to me. And I have spent my life in cities, got the hell out of Houston, and have lived in great cities and have tried to enjoy them the way I know she would. And she will be missed.
Hi guys, I'm Heather. So I tend to talk a lot for long periods of time, so I thought I'd write it down, keep it short and sweet, but I'm going to add those, of course, too. Okay, so trying to come up with words to encapsulate my thoughts and memories of Mary Becker has proven to be a lot more difficult than I could have ever imagined. Anyone who knows me knows I'm never at a loss for words, like diarrhea of the mouth type girl, and Mary in a good way, like sometimes I gotta let things out. Okay. And Mary in her no nonsense way, say it like it is, would be the first one to tell me to keep it short and sweet. So everyone's been saying that to me tonight, so it's like she's in your body, so I'll try. Besides, I want to spend time with Bronwyn and not blab away, but I do want to honor Mary. So I've been, of course, thinking of her and praying for her since she became unexpectedly sick. I'm not going to look up and down. I'm too tired. I just got in from LA, sorry. It literally took my breath away because her magnetic energy was that of someone that seems like they could never leave us. So the idea of her all of a sudden getting sick, it doesn't matter. She's not 20, she's not 30. Yes, she's older than my mom. It doesn't matter. She's going to live forever. That's how